Hey, White Sox fans! Brett Ballantini here, hosting yet another in the in the portfolio of podcasts that we have at Southside Sox. This one you may have heard of. It's legendary. Years ago, you may have listened to it. It's called. Let me run this by you. It's called Dugout Metrics. Last time the Dugout Metrics crew came together, that would be Luke Smailes and Trevor Lyons. It was March 26th. It's summertime. The White Sox are in first place. Wouldn't even know back then. Wouldn't even know how good the White Sox are going to be. And look what they're doing now. So maybe we shouldn't be doing any more Dugout Metrics podcast. Well, anyway, we've started it. So we're here. We're going to talk about some news of the day. And second half, probably the bigger chunk of this is going to be angled toward trade deadline targets, maybe with a little metrics twist, or maybe not. We're going to find that out. It's Luke Smailes. How did the this is Cohawk, Luke Smailes? How did the season end up? And did the Cohawks take a page out of the White Sox book and move you from left field to say catcher?
No, they didn't. And unfortunately, our season ended sooner than we hoped. Lost in our conference tournament. But yeah, hopefully the Sox don't lose early in the postseason. So
now, Trevor's already gotten tired of me, so he's walked away for a moment. But I'm going to ask you both now. Did you get your name? I mean, it's just a 20-round draft. Did either one of you guys still have professional eligibility? Either one of you get your name called a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's been a couple of years for me, so I don't know how that all works, but unfortunately not. I'm just hoping to be able to swing a golf club these days.
Yeah, but the wrist is all, they got the new medicals, about you, right? The wrists are strong and they're ready.
Oh, they're not still not ready. So yeah, I might need a bionic wrist or something for that.
You're far too young for bionics, but go for it. Luke, you catcher eligible, left field eligible, didn't necessarily get the call yet.
No, I'm still waiting on the undrafted free agent sign.
Okay.
So,
all right. Hey,
my anyone can call or text me. The Sox have needed outfielders this year, so they lose a couple more. I'm there.
The good news, Luke, is, and this is sadly pertinent, and this is really a whole nother podcast. So when we jump back on with Dugout Metrics 6, probably in December, we can talk about this. But the undrafted free agent, isn't the minimum like a 20 grand? The minimum is actually pretty decent. I think you can do a lot better as an undrafted free agent than you can say, I don't know, being like a Cubs 5th or 6th rounder, right? So I mean, that UFA might be the way to go.
Yeah, and I can just tell the kids and grandkids that had they not shortened the draft by 20 rounds, it probably would have been there, but it just happened to be when I was eligible, they shortened the draft. So
I will back you on that, Luke. Okay, you guys come from I don't know, let's just say, if you're watching, it might be obvious, but if you're listening, it probably isn't, because your host here for Dugout Metrics is so sprightly. But we do come from different eras of the game, fellas. And I'm going to just sort of pass too much opining here, but let's lead off very quickly with the retirement and unretirement of Yermín Mercedes. Again, Dugout Metrics is trying to combine the idea of metrics, but talking with guys who have been in the dugout and been in the dugout recently. So I would like to ask this question with an angle toward Yermín as your teammate. And what is your reaction to what has happened in the last 24 hours?
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective, from the team perspective, but those guys down in AAA, you have him make that retirement post on Instagram, and then the next day he's unretiring. Those guys are working their tails off to try and get up to the big league level. And obviously Yermín had put in the time as well, as a career minor leaguer. And it is a tough feeling for him, I'm sure, being kind of on top of the world, and then it all comes crashing down so quickly. And he's always been kind of a character. So it was definitely shocking, but you could kind of see where it was coming from. I'm just hoping that everything's all good. It seemed like he was suiting up today. So I don't really know what to make of it all, at least yet. Maybe we'll get some more information coming here in the future, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's got to be the rest of the AAA guys got to be kind of thinking, hey man, we're kind of all going through it. We're trying to all get back. You know, we'd love to have the kind of opportunity that you had. And he had a lot of success at first. And I mean, just ask Luis Robert last year. I mean, he was on top of the world too, and then he hit a slump. But the difference between Robert and Yermín is that, you know, he can play a premium position in the outfield. And Yermín, I mean, the fact of the matter is he just can't really play a position other than DH. So it's hard for the Sox through those struggles to keep him up when, you know, you got Sheets coming up, you got Eloy coming back who's going to DH. Abreu needs some DH at bats. You have Andrew Vaughn, obviously. So there's a lot of people that kind of fit that mold. And as far as the teammate thing, it's kind of tough at this point. You know, he was retiring yesterday and today he's not retiring. So it's kind of hard to know what to make of it so far. But I still think Yermín, you know, when he gets an opportunity, I still think he's a very talented hitter. And I think he could be a really good major league hitter, whether that's on the White Sox or probably more likely it won't be on the White Sox.
Okay, anticipating the next question. It's a speed round question, guys. Does Yermín Mercedes have another plate appearance for the White Sox in his career?
Yes, I think he does. And my prediction was that he's going to get a big hit in the playoffs, and this will be a chapter in the World Series DVD.
Okay, all right.
Wow, that would be really cool. My prediction is no. I just don't see any route to playing time, kind of as Luke was touching on. There's so many guys in that mold, and that's also probably one of the reasons why mentally he might not have been in a great place. He sees that they don't see him as a catcher. They have Sebi Zavala up there over him, obviously a defense first guy. And then with all these guys coming back, including Eloy, you have a lot of DH types with the success that Berger and Sheets are having up there. I just don't see a way that he can swing his way onto the roster again.
Yeah, other than a DH or more so like a September roster expansion or a postseason, you know, extra hitter type of thing. I don't think he's going to be a regular, but I think he, you know, with an injury or two, or just with the roster expansion, I think he could find his way back.
Some things that people might be missing on too, adding a so-called insult to injury, whatever the injury is. I'm going to mispronounce his name, but he's my new favorite White Sox organizational player. Sorry, Jose Rodriguez, but Davy Grullon was acquired from the Braves. He immediately was plugged into catcher, has been whomping the hell out of the ball. He's been getting the catcher reps. Yermín either didn't play, he was playing first base a game, and it doesn't mean he's displaced completely as catcher, but clearly this 2-week or whatever little trial of like learn to call a game wasn't being dashed, but it was at least being put on pause where they're bringing somebody else in who even this new guy might even have a clearer path, being probably more of a two-way player than Yermín. So that could have even been the last straw. But again, we're talking about last straws for a guy who, well, I wasn't going to opine on this and I'm not going to, but let's keep moving on here to what we're going to get into maybe more second half, but here, let's just tease at it. Nelson Cruz traded from the Twins to the Rays. Now, the good news is Nelson Cruz is no longer a Minnesota Twin. The bad news is we hardly play Minnesota any longer. And right now, I can never really remember whether Boston's in front of Tampa, but basically if Tampa is the first wild card, they might end up playing the White Sox. It could very easily wrangle out that he can still haunt the White Sox come October by playing for the Tampa Rays. Reactions, did you ever think that Nelson Cruz was actually going to get traded off of the Minnesota Twins? Certainly not as this season started, because we thought Minnesota was actually going to be a decent team instead of trash.
Yeah, I figured it was kind of inevitable just because even if the Twins do think they'll compete next year, I mean, it's just another year of Nelson Cruz aging. And I think he's 41 now. So, you know, I think they did a pretty good job of getting, looks like 2 pretty good pitching prospects for him on a Rays team that needed some help against left-handed pitching. So, yeah, it could very well end up being that, you know, we see him again in the playoffs, and how ironic would that be?
Yeah, that Joe Ryan, their number 10 prospect at the Twins got back, was really interesting to me, looking into some of his advanced metrics and then some of the numbers that he's been putting up in the minor leagues. He looks like he could be a dynamite prospect. They said he may need a little more polish on a second pitch, but his fastball really plays. So it seems like they got a decent return. Obviously, at this point, like Luke was saying, he's not much use on the Twins this year, and he's just getting older. So I feel like they had to pull the trigger on something like that.
Pretty pricey for what is a rental player, but the Rays also have a top 75 where the rest of us have a top 17, so maybe they can afford to do that. Okay, before we actually get to your wild card picks and take a break, why don't we talk about the two guys who are going to be the deadline acquisitions for the White Sox? Oh, you know it's going to end up this way. It's Eloy Jiménez, who's actually at Charlotte. Luis Robert, who's just began his rehab assignment in Winston-Salem. If it goes like Eloy's by the end of the week, or by next week, certainly, Luis could be in Charlotte. What I want to know from you guys is how the player you see coming back in both cases. Are they going to be best case scenario players? Are they going to be almost replacement level players because they're struggling? Or is it going to be somewhere in between where there's going to be flashes of the player we know, but just maybe not quite back all the way?
I think Eloy, I would expect to be more hit the ground running, especially from a hitting standpoint. I think he's got more of a polished hit tool, I think, and he can kind of more of like a wake up and hit type of guy, where maybe Robert needs to get in a little bit of more of a rhythm. So I could forecast maybe Robert struggling a little bit out of the gate. But, I think Luis obviously brings so much on the defensive side and speed side on the bases as well. So, I just think it's hard to understate like how big it's going to be for the lineup, where the lineup's been pretty good. It's almost, we feel like we don't even need those guys. We forget about them sometimes, but I think they're going to be great. And I think when they both get a couple weeks of at bats, I think, even though they have pretty significant injuries, I think we can expect them to be the guys that they have been in the past.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I expect huge things whenever Eloy gets back throughout the end of the year from him. I was expecting just a massive year from him this year, so I'm super pumped to be able to watch him hit again, add a little bit more thump to the lineup, which has had a little bit more thump of late, but has struggled with that throughout a lot of the course of the year. And then another aspect to Robert is, as Luke was touching on, the speed part of his game and that injury that he suffered. I have no idea how that's going to affect his speed in the short term or even in the long term. So I'm interested to see what he looks like running the bases and what he looks like moving around, because that is an absolutely crucial part of his game. So hopefully he'll be able to come back and just show a little bit of that speed that we all love.
Well, another aspect, Trevor, of Luis's comeback is something you brought up, I want to say, a few weeks ago in a podcast, and that is that Luis might hit the dominoes too hard while he's rehabbing. Now, we haven't seen a lot of footage of him yet. It does seem like, we can't really judge his speed, but it doesn't seem, he doesn't have a dominoes baby right now, so it does appear that he is in decent shape to come back and contribute in the stretch run. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't seen any really footage of him running or anything like that.
Or eating dominoes. So that's a good sign.
For a guy that moves as well as he moves, he's already kind of a bigger body. So, I just, like I was saying in that earlier podcast, I just hope he has been realizing that when it's one thing when you're running around working out like crazy every day, but it's another thing when you're sitting back, not really able to do much lower body wise to be eating dominoes that much. So we'll see what happens.
When the White Sox hand out their coupon booklets to all their players, because they do, millionaires or not, hand out their coupon booklets because they buy them in bulk. What they need to do with Luis is just rip the pages out that have the Domino's coupons, make him pay full price, and you might get him ordering Domino's just a little less frequently. Okay, on that note, let's take a quick break because a bigger chunk of our show is going to be talking trade deadline, who both of our Dugout Metrics experts want to target for the White Sox, maybe positional need that's most important. So we're going to get to that right after a break. So we'll be back in just 1 minute. Hey there, everybody. It is Brett Ballantini, somehow the guy who thinks WOBA is an indigenous instrument or a prescription medication for stinkfoot, is hosting a program called Dugout Metrics. The two experts that I try to just stand aside and shut up while they say the smart things are Trevor Lyons, straight out of Louisville, and it's Luke Smailes, just retired Quahawk in Iowa or in the back in the Chicago area.
Still in Iowa. Yep.
All right. Okay, so we're nationwide with Dugout Metrics. You might not know it because, again, you might not have heard about us, but legend has it that this has been a very respected and very well listened podcast. So jump on, man, enjoy this one, and then go back and enjoy all the other episodes from earlier this year. And who knows, we might get another one out like real soon. Who knows? Especially once we see whether or not Luis Robert has a pizza baby in the oven or not. Okay, let's talk about the trade deadline. Time's running short. No real intense scuttle we're hearing. Obviously, the White Sox like to be clandestine in everything they do, especially in terms of trade talks. Let's not get specific names yet. What I want from both of you is if we have one need to fill, one position we're going to go after, can only make one transaction, and forget this Eloy and Luis coming back as the deadline. I guess what's the position? There's a few positions of need. What is the position that is most crucial to you to add before the end of the month?
I think this might be surprising. I think it's a relief pitcher over second base, over catcher. I think they need to get one like bona fide setup guy. And I have a couple names that I won't get to yet, but I think even over second base that I've been saying you need second base, so you got to fill that hole. It's not going to be Mendick. It's not going to be Larry Garcia. We need a second baseman. Actually, I think my eyes have been open a little bit the past couple days, couple weeks, that they need a guy they can go to in the eighth inning behind or in front of Liam Hendricks.
For me, I'm going to stick with second base, or if you want to be a little bit more general with it, I would say just maybe a left-handed utility bat. It's been well documented how well the White Sox mash left-handed pitching, but they have been definitely human and a lot of the times struggled against really good right-handed pitchers. So in an ideal world, you would get someone who can play multiple positions and swings from the left side, especially with someone if they have a little bit of thump. So we'll see what happens there. There's really no ideal candidate, but we'll get into that, I'm sure, in a second.
Okay, one thing I think where I could see siding a little bit where Luke is at is as much as I don't want to drag this into it, Luis and Eloy coming back does give the offense more punch. It may be able to allow you to offset the fact that we don't have much, might not have a lot of production coming from second base. It might be easier to patch over that because you've upgraded your outfield positions again. But obviously there is still a need. We probably will get to some second base ideas as well. Okay. Now in the past, we've done things like a draft, like, hey, you pick your favorite prospect, whatever, we could sort of go that way this time, but Luke, you sort of drew first blood there. Give me your, forget groups, give me your top then setup target. Who's the guy you'd really like to see the White Sox get? And do you have an idea what the cost might be?
My favorite guy for them to go get would be Ryan Tepera from the Cubs. I think some frustration this year with the relievers has been obviously Foster has been it's been a massive struggle for him this year. There was some regression, I think, coming with him from last year's stats. Hoyer's really struggled with command, although I think he's better than what he's shown. And then the two guys, Bummer and Crochet, are either lights out or they really can't find the strike zone. And that's what's really been in front of Hendricks. Ryan Tepera really doesn't have great stuff from like pitch physical qualities, but his command is just unbelievable. He's got some of the best command of any reliever in baseball, and he just spots up. He throws a slider over half the time. Pretty good fastball too, and he's really just limited all hard contact. So I think would be my like A1 guy to go get. And I don't think he would be super expensive. I think the Cubs are going to try to maximize on Kimbrel there. And they also have Andrew Chafin. So they could be trading 3 or 4 relievers. And I think that's a gettable guy to go get.
Okay, two quick follow-ups then, Luke. Are the Cubs, given the Eloy, Jiménez, and Dylan Cease deal, are the Cubs afraid to trade with the White Sox?
I mean, if they're afraid to trade us Ryan Tepera as if he's going to become some kind of like MVP candidate, like maybe Eloy will be one day. I mean, I think they have bigger issues, but no, I don't think. I think rental relief pitcher, I don't think that should be too big of a deal.
Okay, from the White Sox perspective, then, are we concerned with Cubby stink?
Cubby stink.
Yeah.
Again, I think we're not getting like Bryant or Baez or Rizzo. I think Ryan Tepera will be okay. He even got an MVP vote last year on mistakes, so maybe that's a good omen.
Okay, guys, you might not be keeping up with the games, but MLB like sent out the footage. I just want you to know, because you dropped the name there, Luke. Another no-look tag from Javi Baez tonight. Unbelievable. It's like he caught the ball and just tagged the guy. Like it was like he was levitating. It was an extraordinary play. Never mind the fact that there was about this far between catching the ball and tagging the play. It was unbelievable. I'm so glad they sent that out, because I might not have seen it. I don't watch the Cubs. Another no-look tag. It was extraordinary.
Don't you get more outs?
God.
Don't you get more outs if it's no look?
It actually was 1.3 outs. They put it right up there on the board. Yes. The inning was over, but then they get to carry that 0.3 over. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It was very impressive. Okay. Trevor, you have identified as a top target. Well, you punted a bit, but you did say second base, but I'll allow you, if you really think that the pressing need of just that lefty power bat, you can go for a guy who's not second base, but tell me who your, same drill. Who's your guy and what might it cost?
Touching a little bit on the relief market, I am a huge Aaron Bummer fan. If there's one guy that I think is going to really lock it in the second half and show that he can be that eighth inning guy, I think it's Bummer. Another name to keep in mind is Kendall Graveman, really good reliever from the Mariners. The Mariners are kind of in the outside of the wild card hunt. But this next week, they're going to have 4 against the A's, who they're chasing in that wild card hunt, and then 3 against the Astros. So if they struggle this upcoming week, I could see them becoming sellers. And he's a guy with a nasty sinker slider combination, almost a Aaron Bummer type from the right side. And I think they could use a guy that can get out left-handed hitters. And then also another reason why I thought maybe the relief market might not be as critical is you might get a guy like a Dylan Cease in the postseason that is going to be pitching out of the bullpen. So that might be a bonus to your relief staff that you may not think about. As far as what I had originally said, a left-handed hitting utility guy, that would be Adam Frazier, who is the cliche name that everyone is talking about. It's no secret. It's nothing too crazy, but he's a Nick Madrigal type player. One thing that concerns me a little bit about him is he's never really had an above average season offensively prior to this year, if you look at all the advanced stats, but he's having a huge breakout year, rarely strikes out, isn't going to hit for a ton of power, but does hit from the left side and can play multiple positions. So he can play second base, he can play a little bit of outfield, and he plays Gold Glove defense at second base as well. He's going to cost a decent amount. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I would be very interested to see where other teams are valuing Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger after their cup of coffee in the major leagues, see how that has shifted their value and how the White Sox are valuing them. And then if they really wanted to go big, I love Joey Gallo. He's not a second baseman, but he's a guy that could definitely add some immediate thump to their lineup, walks a ton, hits for a lot of power, and plays Gold Glove defense out there in the outfield as well. Eduardo Escobar is another name that a lot of people have been talking about. Jonathan Scope, not as interested in him, but we'll see where the market shakes out.
Does it help in the case of Frazier that he can play? He does play the multiple positions, so it's not necessarily as if you're going all in and paying. Let's face it, a bigger price than maybe an expiring contract, a relief arm. Does it help that you can plug him in at second this year, and maybe he's your right fielder next year, does that help justify what might be an increased cost to acquire Adam Frazier?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely an aspect of it because, excuse me, obviously they will have Nick Madrigal coming back next year. So it's got to be a guy that has that positional flexibility if it's not just a rental. And he definitely provides that. I'm just really interested to see how active they will be. Like you said, with getting Robert back, with getting Eloy back, I could see them kind of staying a little bit quieter as much as we all would hate to see it, but maybe just adding a middle tier relief arm. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Don't forget, Trevor. Don't forget, we extended Lance Lynn. That's practically like another acquisition, even though it's next year. It's practically another acquisition. There's a lot of stuff they can do to rationalize and justify. And listen, the moves are great, so it's not criticizing those moves. It's just, you can sort of look outside. There's other media guides. There's 29 other media guides you can look at. Okay, Luke, I'm going to throw it back at you and ask you now. Bat target. If it's not relief pitching, are you looking catcher? Are you looking outfield? Are you looking second base? Or if there's a guy who's more attractive, even though it's not your position target, who's the guy who jumps out at you would be most attractive for the White Sox to acquire?
I'm going to agree with Trevor that Joey Gallo would be a dream scenario to go get. Could you imagine having Moncada, Grandal, and Gallo all drawing like 25% or 20% plus walk rates ahead of Anderson, Abreu, all these guys that just can swing it whatever the hell they want then. That would be crazy. But Texas is going to want so much for him. And the Sox, let's face it, they don't have a very good farm system to trade from right now. So it's probably going to cost you, I don't even know if Crochet can headline a deal for him. So I just don't think they have the firepower to get it done. I think, again, agreeing with Trevor, I think Frazier would be a really good get. I think it's like a different mold of Madrigal, what he does for you. But you got to be okay with plugging him in full-time in right field next year. He's never really been a full-time outfielder, so would be kind of a shift for him. But I think he could probably handle it. And he's really good, just like Madrigal. It's like this innate ability to optimize launch angle and exit velo to where you're just spraying the ball over the infielders' heads all over the field. So you can't really shift against him. So it's why he's able to kind of maximize that batting average. And, he's fourth in the league in doubles. He's got a .330 batting average. So with him and Madrigal, it's so similar. It's that their innate ability to kind of just find holes and almost not hit the ball too hard at the outfielders. You just got to bloop it right over the infielders.
Luke, you give us a reality check, which Trevor just blew off. So I love that. We got the fantasy picks, and you're being you're being a little bit more the downer here. But let's have a reality check here. What is the tier player we can get given what we have to trade? Assuming few teams, if any, are going to be suddenly bowled over by Gavin Sheets or Jake Berger. Of course, it helps that they've hit the ground running in the majors, and it helps that they've mashed in AAA, and they're not particularly old prospects, let's say, and they're not your mean age. But even those guys, they're not going to centerpiece a deal, probably even for Adam Frazier, as much as we want to downplay it. Do we really have to adjust as much as we want to jump on the Sox for not just going crazy and shopping like it's Wheel of Fortune or something? Of really realizing there's a ceiling to what they can get with this system, because even some of their most attractive young guys, either they're not really doing great, like the single A guys, or there might be hesitation on the Sox part given, there's the guy in San Diego. And I don't know that those guys can necessarily be a centerpiece for a Gallo or Frazier. Do we need to check our expectations here heading into this last week?
Yeah, I think so. I don't even know. We don't really know what Pittsburgh wants for Frazier. I think they're trying to sell high here. So they might be coming and say, we want Crochet. And the Sox are like, heck no, he's a big part of our bullpen for this year.
Right.
We can't move Crochet. I think Gallo's out of the question. And, it might be Eduardo Escobar, who we kind of thought all along. That might be, 2.5 month rental with Arizona, I think. You can get him for a couple of those mid-tier prospects. That might kind of be the ceiling. So maybe Escobar and Tepera, and I think that'd be a pretty solid deadline, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's a little bit of what I was touching on about the fact that we may not see a big move. We may just see a relief pitcher as much as we would like to see some more than that. But with the system that the Sox have and the underperformance of some of the bigger names in the system so far this year, there's not too much that we can really offer to make a power move for some of these big name guys. Jose Rodriguez is a guy that's definitely interesting to me, and I'm sure is interesting to a lot of other teams with how young he is and the premium position that he plays and the hitting skills that he's shown. But if you get rid of a guy like him and a couple others, the system gets even thinner. So we'll see what happens.
Him and Brian Ramos, I think, are two interesting younger guys. Brett's shaking his head, but I mean, the big picture I think here is there is no guarantee that we're ever going to have a pitching staff as good as starting pitching staff as good as the one we have now. And we have a good lineup that's cost controlled. Everyone's going to start getting more expensive. Even though we're saying we don't want to, trade the farm and mortgage everything. You could argue this is the year that we have as good a chance to win it all this year as any year. So I think that should also be, in the back of the head of Rick Hahn, like the time to go is now. Yeah. And, if we're trading, even if we're trading a Jose Rodriguez and Brian Ramos or 3 or 4 of those type of guys, I'm not saying you got to move Vaughn or Kopech, but even if it's a Crochet to get an Adam Frazier, I think it's something you got to strongly consider doing.
Sure. I'm not a prospects hoarder. I just don't see not with what Rodriguez is doing this year, but yeah, hey, put the deal in front of me and then let's see what happens. I'm not sure anybody we've talked about here gets me pulling that trigger, given that that's probably not going to be, it's not going to be 1-for-1. Okay, guys, I'm talking to 2 Zach Collins fanboys here, so I am not going to let this podcast end as we wind down without talking about catcher, because somehow we've ignored catcher and we have no catchers. Yasmani Grandal is coming back. We don't know how effective he's going to be catching. He's a badass. So chances are he's going to just slide right back in like August 15th. He's going to be catching 5 days a week. Maybe he might not catch again this year. We don't know because he's had this nagging knee thing. This has been persistent. Zach Collins, you can defend him. Sebi Zavala's up. Hey, Sebi's been better than what you would have expected. Yermín, I personally don't think he's going to have another plate appearance for the White Sox. We have no catcher. So what do we do with catcher?
I was trying to look at some of the targets, and there's not really like a lot of catchers out there. I mean, Sebi Zavala has been pretty impressive, to be honest. The way he's called games, and looks like he's a pretty good pitch framer. The fact of the matter is, for the record, I always like Zach Collins for his bat against right-handed pitching, not his defense and his frequent at-bats against left-handed pitching. He is horrible behind the plate. Sorry, but I mean, that's just the truth. And, honestly, if you threw Yermín up there, I mean, I know he's probably not the game caller, doesn't have the experience there, but he can't be worse framing and defensively against auto steal against Zach Collins.
Yeah, I'm with Luke. I'm starting to get, as much as I hate to say it, I'm starting to get a little bit off the Zach Collins train, and it's not necessarily his fault. He's getting just completely overexposed in an everyday role. I feel like it's the Liam Neeson quote from Taken, where he has a very particular set of skills. And if it's anything outside of that particular set of skills, he looks lost out there.
I know what it is, Trevor. It's dancing after wins. That's the skill. Yeah. Okay.
Dancing after dubs and hitting right-handed pitching or walking against right-handed pitching.
I think I don't know metrics, but I got one. I got one right, guys. All right. So yeah, I that is, Luke, you brought it up. The counter to that is what's out there. So, I mean, geez, we just traded for a guy, or bought a guy from the Braves and Grion, who's like, okay, I mean, obviously I wouldn't be the best guy out there, but I mean, okay, it was Jonathan Lucroy. What is out there even to grab? So, I mean, I set you up with sort of a sucker punch question there. I mostly wanted to hear what the fresher take from compared to the one 6.5 years ago we had about Zach Collins, because we were talking him up a little bit more. Although, Luke, you are allowed that disclaimer, because it's fair. I don't think you're ever saying I'm a Zach Collins defense fanboy, because you might have actually been fired from the Dugout Metrics podcast had you said that. But a fair clarification, and you're right. As a regular 5-game-a-week starter, it's like it was never supposed to be this way.
No. And as far as trade targets on my sheet, I have written down Tom Murphy from Seattle. And he's hitting like 196. And I wrote him down because he's a decent pitch framer and he's a veteran. And yeah, it's probably, and I think Luke Roy had like a 75 WRC plus in AAA or something with Atlanta. Like, it's just, I guess you could see why he didn't make the team. Yeah. But I mean, when you have a guy like Dallas Keuchel saying like, I love throwing to Jonathan Lucroy, like maybe that's all you really need. You know, if with Grandal coming off a knee injury, if he's not able to catch, like you can't have Zach Collins down the stretch, especially not on a playoff roster catching.
And maybe like with second base, if you're getting some of this fortification, if you're getting healthier, even if you get Grandal back as a DH playing a little bit of first base and just like spot catching, maybe you can live with Sebi if they love throwing to him. If his defense remains strong, solid, dependable, you don't want to punt a position in your lineup. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what he's been, but even if it, even if he regresses to like scary Charlotte, 2019 or 21 level, maybe you can live with that if you got the other 8 slots in your lineup just mashing hell out of the ball.
Yeah, Grandal is a guy that I would be very, very hesitant to rush back, especially with the giant lead on the rest of the division.
Yeah.
He's so critical behind the plate. So if you want to start working him in for some DH at bats and say, hey, we're not going to make you get down and catch until the very last moment that we have to before the playoffs, maybe give him a week back there before the playoffs or 2 weeks. I don't know what his recovery timeline is looking like, but you want to prolong that wear and tear on the knees as much as possible, especially considering the fact that early in the season, he was complaining about some knee issues that were holding him back offensively, which is why he was taking such a passive approach up there. So he looked like he was just starting to hit his stride. And if we can get him back to half of that, it's an improvement over what we're getting right now out of the catcher spot.
It's going to take a lot of discipline because he's already out there playing catch. He's with the team. It's like, you can tell he's like shows, he's probably sleeping with the chest protector so that the first time Tony sees him in the morning, he's like, oh, hey, it's got chest. Maybe I should pencil him in. He's sly. He never wants to miss a game. And that could cause trouble. I mean, he's getting older. It could cause trouble being that relentless about it. It'd be nice if the White Sox had a second catcher where Yasmani could say, hey, maybe I can take a day off and just still collect my paycheck because I got a guy who can actually like catch, but we don't have one yet. Maybe Sebi. He was a brighter star in the White Sox prospect constellation, a few years ago. So it's not to say that's necessarily disappeared. We are getting the call from Zoom to say, hey, wrap this up. We know people have missed Dugout Metrics, but we don't care. We're a faceless corporation. So we do have to wind this up. Thank you for listening and watching and reading a little bit about Dugout Metrics 5. Maybe we'll have Dugout Metrics 6 sooner than you think. I hope so. I'm going to get on these guys to try to do another one soon. Maybe a post-trade deadline episode. But anyway, thanks as always for listening, reading, sometimes even watching. Trevor, Luke, thanks for being with me once again. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Brett.
All right. Take care, guys.